What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Weekly Cheddar. What's one of the best types of Weekly Cheddar? It is game week. There is football tomorrow. Obviously, we're going to be talking more about Packers football, but Packers football just two sleeps away. Gosh, it's exciting to be here. Hope you all are excited. It should be a good show tonight. One little caveat, one little thing going on. There is a fantasy draft going on that I am participating in at the moment. So if you see me peeking down, there's like 5 rounds left. Don't worry. Just listen to the content. If you don't even have to watch, but I am gonna have to like look down sometimes. We're 11 of 16 rounds in, but we got a lot to talk about tonight because obviously there is football going on with the Packers on Friday in Brazil against the Eagles. We're going to talk a lot of Fangio defense. We're going to talk a lot of Kellen Moore offense. We're going to talk about maybe how the Packers can combat that. We've got a few things with Pulse of the Fan Base tonight. And, of course, we have to make predictions. So that'll be really, really fun, too. So a lot going on tonight. So I don't know where we want to start. But Omer's saying just 2 more days until the Packers start their 20-game winning streak. That would be unreal if that were the case. If they started a 20-game winning streak, that'd be incredible. I'm just hoping, any way they can get to the Superdome, the Caesars Superdome in February works for me. It doesn't have to be 20 in a row. Chris, what's going on? Omer says the Eagles linebackers and secondary can be had. They absolutely can. We can definitely talk about that. I know Packers Total Access, those guys have done a really tremendous job kind of breaking down the matchups via PFF grade. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. We're going to kind of go in a different direction just so it doesn't overlap and so you feel like you're getting something new in that regard. But yes, the Eagles linebackers and secondary, it feels like even with Devin White out, Nakobe Dean probably in. Be interesting how Zach Bond is deployed in this defense. He is listed as a starter. The thing is, with Zach Bond, he's had so many snaps with the Saints before coming over to Philly as a pass rusher, not just an off-ball linebacker. He has had so many reps as a pass rusher that it makes you wonder if he's going to get looks when the Eagles are 5 down line, right? When they're in that more 34 look, right? When they don't have the 4 down linemen, and you're going to get him and Huff perhaps as guys that are going to be rushing off the edge because he has similar-ish size to guys like Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick who have been outside rushing in that offense. Sorry, guys, I'm looking at this draft and I have to. Don't worry, by the end of the show it will not be a problem. Don't you worry. But I don't have a QB yet, so we're chilling. We're waiting on that. But I will draft Love if he is available in the 12th round, which there's a slight chance he could be. Anyway, but yeah, Zach Bond playing linebacker will be interesting. Nakobe Dean we kind of talked about. He was kind of the, when you talked about Nakobe Dean, he was the field general, the leader in that Georgia defense when the Eagles drafted him. Little undersized, of course, has dealt with some injuries, so hasn't been quite what maybe everybody envisioned him to be, right? So Turtles. I really want to keep the bit going. But I don't know how much, he falls to the 3rd round. So the expectations maybe were lowered a little bit for a player like that. But obviously at the time, everybody felt it was a steal. So far really hasn't done a whole lot for the Eagles defense, but they are trotting out obviously Huff coming over from the Jets. That's a big part of what their 5-man front's going to look like. They have Josh Sweat. They have Brandon Graham, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. They've got a big rotation. Now Carter and Sweat and Huff and Graham are really their dudes right now as they kind of wait in the wings for Nolan Smith to kind of maybe take a leap. Sorry, we're just peeking. But yeah, I think the defense is going to be a strong suit in that front. Now the linebackers we kind of touched on. And of course, Darius Slay, he's been a great player for a long time. He's not quite at the level especially that he was, when you look at the Eagles in 2022, everything was firing on all cylinders. They make the Super Bowl. They kind of did that on the back, especially of the front, but also the secondary with Slay and Bradbury. Now, Bradbury not going to play. Going to open the door for some young guys and unproven guys for there are going to be some young for that secondary. Quinyon Mitchell going to be one of them. Is he going to play nickel? Is he going to play boundary corner? I assume they're going to let Slay play the field, which is obviously there's more room to that side of the field. But it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Mitchell plays nickel or not. But Mitchell had a pretty solid preseason. That's definitely worth noting as well. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how that defense trots itself out personnel wise. What's going on, United Bates? Packers Kingdom saying, so I got to ask, so I got questions. You know, last year how our defense was everywhere. And then week 1, we couldn't stop anything. The question is, our O-line, we can bully them. Okay. Is our O-line not good, I think is what you're asking. Can we bully them? I think the run game, there are going to be opportunities to bully that team, because I do think, you're going to. Yes, Jordan Davis can defend the run, but I do think they're some of the Fangio stuff. If Green Bay runs out of nickel, right, you're going to see guys have to try to play a gap and a half, and that's not an easy thing to do. Now Carter might be the exception to that rule, of course. But I do think if Green Bay runs out of nickel a lot, I think they're going to get some favorable looks. So I do think that will be something to watch for sure. How much snaps are we going to see from Edgerrin Cooper? If you guys don't know what we're talking about here, that was a running joke from Derailed the other night. We talked. I kind of answered and said maybe we might see him, for a handful of snaps, maybe in the low teens is something you look for. Obviously, he's still coming in with lingering injury, so it's something that you have to watch for. I do think we're going to get Quay and McDuffie, a heavy dose there, and probably some Eric Wilson as well. I don't know how much we're going to see of the rookies. That's going to be something that to monitor for sure. But yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes in the linebacker room, especially personnel wise. Ron Sanville says, who plays on first and second down for Huff? I think it depends. I think Huff can potentially be out there if they're in 5-man fronts because he's playing wider and it's less for him to take on. However, I do think if they're going to be if they're in a 5-man front and they don't want Huff out there, I think it's going to be the opportunity to grab, somebody like Sweat and place him out there. Nolan Smith isn't any stranger to defending the run, so that's something to think about as well. I think, even if Graham's out there sometimes, they're going to be in a rotation. If Huff's only out there on third downs, that's fine, but he might get some looks when you have a 5-man front. But I don't know how much it's going to be interesting to see how much Green Bay's in 12 if they get enough guys for base, if that's enough, of a snap percentage for that Eagles team. So, guys, who should we pick in fantasy? We've got a lot of options. Should I take Jordan Love? What does everybody think? This might be an early pulse of the fan base kind of thing here. We're going to draft Love for the culture. We're going to draft Love for the culture, folks, for sure. For sure. Okay. Sorry, guys. I apologize for being distracted. I didn't think this was going to be a 2-hour plus thing going on here. So, okay. Let's see. Joseph Gleason says, if we're picking on a rookie QB, I'd much rather go after Cooper DeJean than Mitchell. Is Cooper DeJean going to be a starter, though, is the question. That's really the question that I have for the most part for this group, because because I know the Eagles have other guys who have played on the perimeter. I don't know if they're going to trot DeJean out there to play nickel. I know he's been hurt a decent amount, but yeah, I'm uncertain if Cooper DeJean's going to get a lot of snaps. Said that's a rhetorical question. It sure is. It sure is. Okay. Where are we here? I'm saying I didn't mean week 1. I meant week 2. So last year defense, week 2, it was a struggle. Okay. So are you asking, how Bijan just ran on us? Yeah, I think we're going to get into this, right, with Barkley, Dallas, red zone, right? We're going to get into that heavily here as we kind of get rolling. I get what you're saying, Packers Kingdom. I'm going to answer that. I'm going to start because I think I understand it now. So we'll do that. We will get into that heavily once we get to Fangio and what Kellen Moore are going to do. Ron Sandville says, Eagles guys are talking, saying Mitchell is playing outside. Okay, so Mitchell playing outside, so that means maybe DeJean's going to get some reps at nickel. Maybe they've got somebody in mind at nickel. But yeah, that's okay. That's good to know at the very least. Prince Cap Sason, what's going on? Says Hopper's probably readier than Cooper. It does seem like, Hopper's got more reps, right? He hasn't dealt with injury. Cooper has. So that's something, that I don't know how much we're going to see Edgerrin Cooper. But Hopper's against the run has been pretty good. Has been pretty good. You don't believe in Love and your team, you better. He's NFL MVP. Yeah, I just, in fantasy, it could be a lot of Josh Jacobs this year. So I'm not totally sold, but I picked him. I did pick him. My quarterbacks are going to be him and Jaden Daniels. Maybe I'll. There was a lot of guys still there, so we'll see. Maybe I'll take 3 QBs since there's a lot of them. And Joseph says take Garrett Wilson. Joseph, you don't know how upset I am that I don't have Garrett Wilson on any team this year. That is, I can't stand that I don't have him on any team. I wasn't in a good position really to pick him in a lot of spots this year. So, okay. Packers Kingdom. We'll answer this now since this makes sense. I was saying if we can't beat up on their O-line and our D-line beats up on their, if we can't beat up on their O-line and our D-line, does that mean our O-line stinks and we need to go up against the Eagles O-line at practice? So I think the Packers defensive line is going to have some work cut out for them, especially at tackle, right? I think that, guys like Slayton, guys like Clark, Wyatt, they're going to be potentially able to push guys around, right? New center for the Eagles in Cam Jurgens. Yes, he was handpicked by Kelsey. That doesn't mean he's Kelsey 2.0, right? We don't know. And Dickerson's a good player, but that center right guard spot, again, just like us, just like Green Bay, that's the spot where we're going to have to attack. And hopefully, Clark and Wyatt and Brooks are ready to do that. And I think if we don't beat up on their O-line in terms of the tackle positions, I'm not insanely surprised because they have really good tackles, right? In Mailata and Johnson, those are going to be tough assignments for Gary, for Smith, for LVN, for Enagbare, right? Those are going to be tough assignments. I'm more worried about if they can take advantage of the weakness. If Green Bay can take advantage of the weakness on the Eagles' offensive line and find a way to help with guys like Carter, I think Green Bay might be able to push around the Eagles in the run game, but I do think that does open the door for the Eagles to be able to get the Packers out of sorts in the run game as well. I think both run games can thrive in this game. And does that mean that Green Bay isn't battle tested going up against each other every single day? Maybe not, but ultimately, this game, I think is a big deal in terms of how does Green Bay stack up in the trenches against the league overall? Because if they get pushed around in the Philly game, it's kind of like, okay, good learning experience. How do you regroup and get back for the Indy game, which I think will be, maybe a little more underrated in terms of their game in the trenches, right? O-line and D-line. But I think if it's one game, I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be a persisting problem. But, I think it's a good learning experience. But I do think Green Bay is going to have an opportunity, just like the Eagles are, to take advantage of center and right guard on this offensive line. So it's just going to be up to them to figuring out how to best attack weaknesses and get matchups that they like. That's going to be up to Halfley and the defensive line. I definitely still believe in them to be able to do it. So I'm excited to see how that goes down. So Turtle says, of course we draft Love. I went with it. Am I confident in it? No. But they left a lot of QBs out there. So, and the tackles are studs, Omer. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. Let's we got 14 in here. That's a decent amount. Let's do this. Let's go to you guys here for this before we get into kind of the Fangio defense and then Kellen Moore's offense. Let's do this. I want everybody in chat, I want your non-QB. Can't pick Jordan Love for this. I want your non-Jordan Love MVP of the Packers this season. Drop it in the comments. And I want to see what everyone thinks. I have my pick. It's already here, ready to unveil. But I want to get everybody's non-QB MVP of the Packers this season. I'm just optimistic but happy. But right now, it's just all talk. Yeah, it is. But there's going to be a lot of, like, if you've looked at what Green Bay's obviously done and what they've worked on and what the Eagles are going to do, there's going to be an adjustment period, right? I think the probably the most experienced unit, at least in terms of scheme, entering this game is going to be the Green Bay offense, and that's an exciting thing, right? Green Bay is going to, Green Bay has all that experience. Jalen Hurts and company, they got a new offensive coordinator. The Eagles have done a little bit of work with the Fangio scheme before. However, there are a lot of new faces in that room. So that's what's going to be different. And obviously Green Bay in the Hafley scheme, it's going to be slightly different than what they've been used to as well. And that's all right. Okay. Let's see who we got here from the comments. Chris N is saying X. So Xavier McKinney. Okay. Omer says Quay Walker and Christian Watson. So he did on both sides of the ball. So did Quay for defense, Watson for offense. Packers Kingdom saying I would be mad if we played soft zone. Again, I think there's going to be some cover two principles, but I'm sure there's going to be some man coverage looks. So I'm excited to see this defense. Hafley didn't show a lot, so I'm excited to see what kind of blitz packages he's got cooked up for this game. Obviously, Jalen Hurts hasn't played the best when he's faced cover zero. Doesn't mean the Packers are going to do it a bunch, but they're going to probably pick their spots in terms of attacking that, because I'm sure that it's something that Hurts and Sirianni and Moore have gotten together before and said we need to work on this. We need to work on it. So excited to see that. We might do another pulse of the fan base and see who you guys think I should pick in fantasy here. But I've got a good idea, I think. So, last pick that matters. Okay, so we got a Christian Watson, we got a Quay, we got an X. Ron Sanville says Dobbs is the MVP. Respect Oranges goes Rashawn Gary. Prince Capsaicin going Devontae Wyatt. All really nice picks. I like it a lot. I really do. So, for me, I'm going to agree with Chris. I think my non-QB MVP, I think for the Packers, that's going to in 2024 is going to be Xavier McKinney. I think that the amount of stability he brings the back end of that defense, the amount of ground he can cover, his versatility, his playmaking skill set, all of that is going to contribute. He's going to help the young guys get in their spots. I'm sure he's going to help the linebackers. I think he's just going to have a good eye for what's going on and be able to communicate and just play impressive ball for this Packers team. I'm really confident in McKinney's ability for sure. So that's what I got on that. Don't worry, guys. As soon as I make this pick, we're cooking. All right. Okay. There we go. All right, we're done. Now, Packers Kingdom says, what do you think about the USC center? Yeah, so I'm a little behind on the college stuff from this past weekend. I did see it a little bit in passing. I haven't gotten to the film part of it yet, but I know that there was some good center play from USC in Florida this past weekend that I'm excited to check out. I think I have both those games, so I'll be able to take a look. Not a lot of thoughts on the USC center. I think, the next couple weekly cheddars we'll definitely be able to get into more of the prospects just because I will have a much better idea of the guys that obviously aren't in most people's top 50s and 75s and maybe even hundreds, that there will be guys like that I will have a better eye on. At this moment, though, I don't have a really great eye for a lot of those mid-round guys who are making, potential big jumps this season. So a lot of votes, by the way, as we kind of pivot back here, a lot of votes for, the defensive side of the football, right? X, Quay, Gary, and Wyatt. So a lot of different defenders. Nobody picked Jair, which I think is interesting. Something definitely worth monitoring. But I like that a lot of people are confident in the defense more than the offense to find their MVP, and that's an exciting thing. That's what you guys, we should be excited for this defense. If the MVP non-Jordan Love edition comes from the defense, that is really, really good. If we sit in Packers Kingdom, if we sit in soft zone, we need to see ball, get ball. Yeah, I think rallying to the football is going to be a major part of this, right? You're facing against, you're facing off against a savvy player after the catch in Devontae Smith. You're facing off against, kind of a missile after the catch in A.J. Brown. So I think that's true, but rallying to the football is going to be key, and I think that Hafley's defense, I think they're bought into that. Ron Sanville says, I like that X will keep the peer pressure on Ja. Got to perform to be the top guy in this. Yeah, I don't think it's any guarantee that Jair is going to be the top, guy in the secondary. So I think that's good that there's some heat on him to kind of go be that guy when there's, more press looks and man looks that Jair can hopefully, rise to the occasion a little bit and show that he belongs in the top 5, top 3 corner conversation. And he can kind of cement himself potentially as the top corner from his class, which has kind of been an up and down kind of battle for him since he came into the league. So Joseph Gleason says, I think Dobbs picks up where he left off in the playoffs and Bullard plays lights out day one. I would love to see Bullard dominate from day one. Bullard and McKinney being back there for that defense would be massive. So, both those guys coming up big early. I think, turnover-wise, limiting yards after the catch, being in positions to create turnovers, tackling, all of that stuff. If both of them are playmakers but also reliable, defense can really cook because the coverage then back there can be helpful for that pass rush that might be taking a little longer. So I like that. Yep, if we sit in soft zone, got to read and react. No doubt. Come up, make a play, no additional yards. Yeah, I think this is all kind of stuff that Hafley and all the position coaches are probably, kind of hammering home as much as they possibly can. So, yeah, last 2 seasons definitely been subpar, says Omer for Jair. He needs to step up. That is no doubt about that. He definitely needs to step up to be that guy. So, all right, let's pivot a little bit here. I want to talk about this because I think it's going to be a really, really important part of what we're talking about on Friday and kind of maybe even breaking down the game afterwards is this, is the Fangio defense and what you're going to see from it. So obviously the Fangio defense, the principle, the kind of the, if you did a 1-sentence elevator pitch on the Fangio defense in Philly, it's too high shell coverage that helps you play back to front, right? Nobody's running backwards in coverage. It's keeping things in front of you, right? It's also making teams take long drives, take what's underneath, but at the same time, it's not always necessarily a zone defense, right? There's a lot of man-match principles, and obviously those principles are instilled based on the weak side of the coverage, the strong side of the coverage, right? What the number 1 does, what the number 2 does from each side of the formation. That it's there is a definite complexity to it, and that's what makes it so difficult for young defenders to get a good grasp of it, and then you can see some communication issues. But obviously, I think there are ways to combat it, right? You saw the Chiefs do a nice job in the red zone and that Super Bowl against the Eagles, kind of stressing with motion and getting them into tough spots where there were potential switches, and that was always part of the scheme and what they were putting together over there, even under Gannon. And so a lot of those switches, they took advantage. Now, right, if you look at what Fangio does from a coverage standpoint, it's quarters obviously can mean, 4 guys, deep, 3 underneath. And a lot of that is what they're going to do, especially, if Green Bay's in 11 personnel, right, 3 wide receivers, probably going to be a nickel to match that, of course. And that kind of, there's often going to be cover 6 and there's going to be cover 8. I believe cover 6 is, cover 6, I believe, is cover 4 to the strength, to the strong side, and then cover 2 to the weak side, right? So cover 4 has your quarter, and then you have the half field to the weak side where there are less playmaker, skill positions, receiver, tight end, what have you. And so what that does is obviously it kind of creates a sort of triangle or a square over on one side of the field, and you get to, sometimes your triangle on the other side. So what it does is it's giving, either the nickel, sometimes on the strong side is handling the number 2, right? The 1 could be a man everywhere he goes. It's called Meg. But a lot of it is, okay, number 1, is he going vertical? If so, I'm going to take, as the outside corner, I'm taking him vertically. If he's going inside, I'm passing him off to the number 2, and I'm going to look where things are elsewhere. So a lot of that comes down to, again, just hammering home these certain principles, what to do if the receiver in front of you does this. And so a lot of that, I think, is going to, give Green Bay, right, and what it's going to show Green Bay and Jordan Love is, you're not going to be able to tell what the coverage is necessarily, right? You're not going to be able to tell if, we're in 4, we're in 6, we're in 8. You're not going to be able to see it until the snap. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to push quarterbacks to have to make quicker decisions, process things faster post-snap to find the open man, right? You're not going to necessarily be able to see, oh, this guy's going to be open on my first read pre-snap, because you just don't know exactly what the coverage is. Because with the 2 high shell, unlike if you're showing middle field closed, which is often, with the single high safety and a safety dropping down to the middle of the field, the 2 high shell can rotate into the 1 high very quickly, and you're going to get cover 3 looks, cover 9 looks. So the post-snap rotation is part of that, right? That could get you into thinking what's coming and is not. Not to mention, right, the flipping coverages one half of the field to the other. When you don't know what's coming pre-snap, again, it's going to challenge Jordan Love to make correct decisions post-snap. And he's done a better job of that. In the second half of the season last year, he's done a better job of that. He has made better decisions. He has worked within the structure of the offense a lot better. And he's seeing things a lot quicker. That's going to be crucial against this defense. Now, LaFleur can combat a lot of this by kind of attacking that center of that defense, right? Making those hook defending linebackers that are kind of working that middle of the field, stress them vertically, right? Dagger's going to be a big part of this, right? Play action with a lot of deep crossers are going to be a big part of this, to where you can take advantage of this defense in certain ways. But I think the biggest one, right, is can Green Bay run the ball effectively out of nickel? I think that's going to be a big part of it, because if you're running out of 12, obviously the Eagles are going to have a 5-man front, and they're going to match your personnel on defense. And so if Green Bay can kick one guy out of the box to be a nickel defender and still run the ball effectively with Josh Jacobs, it's going to give them an advantage. They're going to have an extra hat in the run game because of that 2 high shell, even with a late rotation from a safety downhill to try to defend the run. So it's going to be imperative that Josh Jacobs kind of takes the role of, like, I need to be the bell cow in this game. I need to have, successful runs, and it's going to come down to the offensive line as well, right? From Jenkins, from Myers, from Ryan or Morgan, whoever starts at right guard. It's going to be imperative for those guys, whether they're, whether they got pulls, whether it's inside zone or outside zone, to take advantage, to reach the second level, to do everything right, to give Jacobs an opportunity to hit the crease or work back to find a crease and have successful early down runs, because successful early down runs, it opens you up to a lot of possibilities. Play action, right? If you're going to play a lot of under center stuff, the Eagles are going to be put in a bind, especially second and medium, third and medium to short, where they just don't know what they're going to see. So that early down run success out of 11, and especially, again, if the offensive line doesn't quite do its job completely, you could get into a scenario where, right, you have you have the offensive line not working well, and Jacobs is going to have to sometimes make something out of nothing, which we did see him do in 2022, right? Not as much, of course, in 2023, but we've seen him make something out of nothing. The contact balance, the impressive, lateral twitch, the ability to cut explosively in short areas to make guys miss was really, really impressive with Josh Jacobs in 22. If that part of him comes back, that early down run success is going to be massive. And you could see some big Jacobs runs, because do you trust the linebackers at all in this defense for the Eagles? They're not very big, and either they're not used to playing right the position, Zach Bond, or, again, as we mentioned, they're not very big. Nakobe Dean's not a big dude. If you got guys like Jenkins and Ryan getting to the second level and kind of erasing him, you could spring some very, very big runs for that offense. So that's going to be key. Now, I think there was one thing that I wanted to bring up. I think it was tricks coverage, just because I want to bring up the tricks coverage if I can here. I think it was under middle field open coverage. So I'm going to share the screen here. 1 second. Because I think the tricks coverage was in here. I think. If it wasn't, we'll find it. No, this is the offense. What are we doing here? Here we go. Wait, this isn't it. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. I think so. Zone match, obviously, right, is match coverage based on the routes. We kind of talked about that and what some of these look like, right? Nickel quads is one of those where it's, two guys to the flats and you have quarters coverage everywhere, right? We talked about that a little bit. I want to find tricks. Here it is. Okay, so tricks is a really interesting part of this, because it's used a lot against 3x1, which the Packers have done a good amount of. They've done it out of bunch a little bit as well, but they've done 3x1 enough where you see tight end here, your F and your Z, and now you have your X on one side. Now, there's no guaranteed help for the corner, so this is where you'd put your Dobbs and where you put, in my opinion, your Dontavian Wickses to win against man coverage. Wicks has a really high win rate against man coverage. You would probably put him, in that look and try to get your Watsons, your Reeds, or your Dobbses in situations like this. But what it's going to do, what Tricks does is kind of just basically says, okay, if there's a crosser, and LaFleur has put in a lot of these crossers, right, where you get, something like this, vertical with the Y, and you get kind of this crosser underneath the Y as sort of the clear out option. This would probably be something that with Musgrave on the field. Or you get it with the F receiver running, deeper down the field, and the Z runs across. Sometimes like dagger is a good, probably one of the better concepts to kind of hone in this example. But essentially, if the tight end is doing a nice job here of kind of occupying this middle linebacker, this free safety is going to be able to start poaching crossers. And so that's where you get into some dicey situations when, if the crosser is really the read, Love is going to have to be very, very cognizant of this free safety in 3x1 looks, who is looking to get into a spot where they can poach over the middle of the field. Because essentially, in this tricks look, you're almost sometimes thinking, okay, if it's quarters, right, and you've seen it a lot of the game, you're thinking, okay, maybe it's cover 2 to the side, and they're playing 6, right, where they're playing cover 6, where it's cover 2 here underneath, and you have a safety over the top, and then you have a quarter and a quarter. But they give a coverage like this, and it kind of can blow up in your face if you're not looking for something like that. So that is something that I think will be interesting if Green Bay gets into a lot of 3x1 looks. which I imagine they will, right? Oh my gosh, why is this thing in the way? So yeah, that's something to watch for sure. We kind of, cover 6 is your quarter, half, right? Where they, again, strength of the formation, oddly enough, Green Bay Packers here with a 3-by-1. And almost a nub 3-by-1, essentially, where the tight end is essentially your 1, but he's not attached to the line necessarily, but it's close enough where to the strength of the formation, you have this quarter covered, you have the hook, and then you have the flat. So it's going to be matched based on whatever Green Bay's running out of this formation, and then you kind of have the defenders who's squatting on anything short, right? Your flat route essentially, and then your half of the field. So there's your cover 2 on the weak side of the play, and we kind of mentioned cover 8, which again in a 2-by-2 you could call this the strength of the formation. They're playing cover 2 on this side and cover 4 on the weak side. So you're going to get a lot of these different looks from the Eagles. Now, I don't know how much of each you're going to see. Will they go to straight man sometimes because maybe they think, we have enough to hold up with these guys? Maybe. Right, cover 5 is essentially cover 2 man, if you ever hear that. So there are going to be instances, I think, where you're going to get man coverage, and having your guys like Wicks and having your guys like Dobbs who can kind of, win in those matchups, I think are going to be very, very important. But also having guys who can stretch the defense out vertically with Watson, with Musgrave, with Reed, maybe even Melton as well, are also going to be crucial because it's going to give Love some reads underneath. You're going to be able to get chunk plays over the intermediate, but always have to worry about that tricks coverage. So a little bit of the Fangio defense there for you guys. But it's a lot of different coverages, and it's very complex, and especially with the call. So, I think just it's something to watch for. The complexity with motion, with all that the Packers have done, maybe they have something in the bag to take advantage of that defense. So there you go. Hopefully that wasn't too in the weeds / boring there. Homer says get Nixon out of the secondary, put him in offense. Enough depth there now. Don't need Nixon there. Plus he has magic with the ball in his hands. Yeah, he could be kind of a Tyler Irvin if you wanted to. Good. The rotation hopefully takes snaps away from Nixon. Much more confident in Bullard there. Yeah, I hope they could rotate Bullard into nickel. That's a definite. Ron Sanville says, why has Fangio been more successful than others with this defense? Is he just better situationally? Yeah, I think there's a couple things with that. I think, smarter minds than me have talked about this, and luckily I've kind of listened to it. I think the prevailing sentiment on this is, he's the original, so he's seen the most, right? You see a lot of guys trying to copy him, and they haven't maybe seen all of the things he's seen on offense, right? So and I think he just maybe is better attuned to personnel, what he can do and what the personnel can't do. So maybe he kind of limits his coverage structure to personnel. He's like, okay, maybe I can't play that tricks that we showed you, or maybe I can't play man. Maybe we have to stick to more quarters, or he can get into man coverage. I think Miami has had some pretty good corners recently, so he did a nice job with them down there because those guys could man up in coverage, and then it makes things a lot simpler because you have good cover guys out there, and the pass rush can get home. So he's the original, right? The OG guy, right, in this. So he's seen a lot more as well, and I think he just maybe has a better feel for personnel and what he can and can't do with it. So other guys that have tried to copy it, have not been as successful. I think it's just because, again, they just haven't been around the block enough, right? I think it seems like, at least, and Mike McDonald might be the exception to this because he's kind of bringing a different defense than that Fangio defense to the table. But it's you see a lot of the big defensive coordinators be those older guys who have been around the block. They've seen a lot in this league offensively. They've probably been a part of the cyclical changes offensively as well. But I do think Green Bay has a way out of this Fangio structure. One, motion to confuse and maybe screw up some principles for this defense, and be able to run out of 11 If they can run out of 11, it's kind of going to put them the Eagles into a bind with how much they are going to have to commit to the run. So going to be interesting for sure there. So hopefully that answers it, Ron. Omer says, just hope his D looks like it did last season. If it does, Love will have fun. So the Eagles defense last season was Patricia. So that, right, made it. He went a different route, and teams were able to sort of bully the 5-man fronts with, teams, especially the Arizona Cardinals. If you want to see just an absolute beatdown offensively against the Eagles defense, I would look at the Arizona game where they got multiple tight ends out there. They would motion them out wide. The Eagles would have a 5-man front out there, and they would be asking like Reddick or somebody to cover, or they would just get away with gap runs because the linebackers were not very good. So they took advantage of bad linebacker play last year. But Sean Desai and Patricia were your coordinators on defense last year. Desai got demoted during the season. So Fangio was not in Philly last year. He was in Miami, if I believe. So it will look a little different than last season, I think. So yeah, don't quite guarantee anything from last season. Okay, let's talk about Kellen Moore's offense really quick, because the Eagles are making a change here as well. Right, last year there was so much outside or inside zone that they ran. They were in the shotgun a ton, right, which obviously helps the quarterback run game. It lets Jalen Hurts see the defensive end if he's keeping or not. And there were a lot of it was very very simple in terms of lack of motion. It was stagnation on offense. There was not a lot of movement pre-snap. So you get into a lot of familiar looks. They ran a lot of go balls, right? Hurts was just trying to take off, big chunks with big plays. Defenses were ready for it. Everything was keyed into by the end of the year, and you just saw that offense get really shaky. If teams won on early downs defensively, they got the Eagles backed up into exactly what they wanted to be in. So it's going to be a little different with the Kellen Moore offense. There's going to be a lot of motion, right? So that's going to mess with the linebackers, right? DBs, if you're going to follow in coverage, the motion is going to give Hurts and everybody else an idea of potentially what coverage Green Bay is in. So there's going to be a lot more of that. But there's also potentially, it's hard to say at the moment. There's a chance that we see a lot more under center offense for the Eagles. Now, he's going to have to kind of marry that a little bit with the QB run and QB counter and a lot of the counter and sort of gap runs that the Eagles did last season, right? He's going to have to kind of bring that together into a hybrid run game. And Kellen Moore's done a nice job, I think, of kind of tailoring to his players and their strengths. Obviously, the Dallas run game they had was really good. They would run outside zone. It get them into that naked bootleg that they like to run as well in that Kellen Moore offense, where Hurts can get some easy layups with a lot of crossers, right? So when you get out to bootlegs, obviously Hurts has the ability to run really well. So the bootleg could turn into a 6-7 yard gain on the ground. But the outside zone, they run from 22 personnel. They did a really nice job with that in Dallas. Now the Chargers, where Moore was last year, didn't have a good run game, so it kind of limited them a little bit more. But the Dallas offense, where they did a nice job, was essentially being able to run off 22 personnel out of 12 out of 11. And I think that what it did is those early down stuff gave way to really good play action stuff. And I think Kellen Moore's isn't the most complex. It isn't the most unique offense, but it does, I think, a nice job of combining motion with under center play action to give your quarterbacks good reads. Now, why did Dallas improve on offense when Moore left? I would argue their run game has not been as good since Kellen Moore left. Maybe their passing game has been better, and I think you can kind of, hat tip to McCarthy a little bit because he's, when you're able to move Lamb around more like he did and didn't treat him necessarily just like the X out there, you get him in the slot, you get a lot of, creative looks there. It can kind of stress things a little bit more with your slot, defender or your linebackers. However, your Dallas improving on offense. Don't forget that McCarthy, Green Bay knew exactly what was coming in that playoff game. They were over all of it. All of the stick calls, everything like that, right? Your double slants. So, I know Dallas was really good on offense during the season, but don't forget that McCarthy's offense, Green Bay was ready for every single thing in that wild card game. So I do think the Cowboys ran the football better under more than they did McCarthy. I think McCarthy got a little bit more creative with Lamb, which helped. But either way, neither of those offenses, stayed fresh enough to advance in January and February. So, something to think about there. So I think what they might do, there might be a little less under center run game for the Eagles, just because Barkley, I think, can be a much better gap runner, counter, right? You get him some power looks where this is your gap, run through it with the explosiveness and speed that you have, rather than trying to mirror your processing with your footwork and zone, which I don't think Barkley has been the best at personally. I know some people disagree with that, but it just seems like Barkley's always been kind of have tendencies to panic and bounce out on runs like that, which he has the athleticism and the speed to do, but it's going to get you into trouble with more disciplined players. So, I think you're probably going to see QB runs still there, right? They're probably going to run some QB counter. There's going to be some read option that's still baked in, but I know that Moore is going to want to motion guys like Devontae Smith, get him in the slot for some easy buckets, but also have play action in your back pocket for those shot plays to A.J. Brown. So there's going to be a lot where I think when it comes to, the positives with this offense, and Bleeding Green Nation did a nice breakdown of this, but successful track record using motion, a lot of under center, which will give them another dimension, not a dimension they're going to completely lean into, right? He can commit to the run. He's aggressive and will take shots down the field, but he has built that into play action and not just shotgun, which is a lot of what the Eagles did last year, a lot of what the Bengals have done more recently. Succeed against the blitz. So he and everybody says he takes this very seriously. And again, we kind of talked about that at the top of the show, where it's clear that Hurts struggled against this, and maybe they're going to have a nice plan if the Packers, get into looks where they're blitzing 6, maybe even 7. We'll see, but I can't wait. Now, the negatives on Kellen Moore, at least from what Bleeding Green Nation did, and it's a great breakdown there. The offensive line is going to have to get more used to running outside zone. They haven't as much. There's going to be more timing with the receivers rather than isolation down the field where you have more time to win. It's going to be more about don't mess around in your route to kind of, get the win, be at this spot on time for the throw. Obviously, Hurts making this adjustment is going to be a potential negative. But one thing that Moore has been pretty poor at is the screen game, which is probably a nice look for Green Bay and the aggressive defensive line, where they might be able to take advantage of that. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting with that offense. Now, let's see. Questions. So those were some thoughts I had there on Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. Hope that was a little bit, the slightest bit educational. Again, I don't know everything, but I figured we could kind of just talk a little bit about that. It's going to be a good test for this run D, says Omer, containing Hurts and Barkley, but also for Stokes and Nixon versus the tough Eagles receivers. Now, when the Eagles are in 11, I don't know who they're going to have out there, because if they want a guy who can help in the run game and block, that doesn't sound like Jahan Dotson. So I don't know if they're going to get further down the depth chart there. I'm imagining that the rookie Johnny Wilson probably would be that guy potentially, because he's obviously big, right? 6'6", 237. but they can obviously get into 12 if they want to run. So we'll see. You might not see the third receiver out there a lot for the Eagles, but they have two guys who are studs. So it's going to be tough to contain Smith and A.J. Brown. It just is. And a couple reasons why. I know, where are we? Let me see. Yeah. So I know these are a little bit less recent, but I'm going to bring these up as well really quick as well. Okay, so could we be better running out of 11 than out of 12? Not that Musgrave can't block at all, but if the defense can sub accordingly, I'd take our wide receivers blocking their DBs over him blocking a linebacker. Yeah, there's a chance Green Bay is just flat out better running out of 11. Obviously, it helps when you can take a guy out of the box. And yes, when you have guys like Watson and Wicks and Dobbs who add something as blockers to the run game, obviously those are all, a significant part of why all three are here in Green Bay. So yeah, I think that's true, but I also think the linebacker play is going for the Eagles is good enough to where they couldn't run out of 12 either. But I do agree. I think that when you get into 11 with this team, it's going to present an advantage for sure. But Musgrave, I think, has the quicks as a blocker. He doesn't have the technique, but Kraft obviously has the technique and the physicality as a blocker to really be an advantage in those scenarios. But yeah, I think Joseph, I don't see why they couldn't be. I really don't. Ron Sanville says Nixon on Devontae Smith is concerning. I even think Stokes is a little concerning because Stokes has that tendency to he can open up a little bit early, and Devontae Smith is the type of player who just has good pace in his routes and just has probably has a doctorate in salesmanship as a route runner to the point where any vertical pressure might, Stokes cannot panic. That's the biggest thing. He cannot panic with vertical pressure on stems against Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown because he should know he has the speed to recover. I think the issue for him is going to be in transition against these guys. Smith's an incredible player at the top of his route, and that's going to be a test for somebody like Eric Stokes. So, yeah, this is a good point by Ayers Joy here. Do the Eagles even have good linebackers? Musgrave can block average block shedders. I think Musgrave against Nakobe Dean is an interesting one where Nakobe Dean's shorter. He's going to have some better leverage, but it might be a situation, where it's just if you get to the linebackers, still, I think the Eagles are trying to kind of just throw guys out there and hope that it works rather than trying to draft an elite player. That's Howie Roseman. He's always been that way. He's pretty much ignored linebacker as long as he's been there. So it's going to be the weakness, no doubt. And because if you go watch the Arizona game and watch what happened when two tight ends got on the field for Arizona and how they could spread them out with two tight ends, but I think Green Bay could do the same thing. It's going to put potentially a outside linebacker, type who's not, the best in coverage out there against a tight end. And that's the matchup that Green Bay could feast on. Arizona definitely feasted on it too. But yes, I think that Musgrave against Dean would be interesting. I think Baughn's going to present more of a challenge because Baughan has been a good pass rusher, so he's dealt with tackles before. So I imagine tight ends aren't going to be as big a challenge for him to shed blocks. But, I think that still running out of 12 can be successful, but I think they're going to be better off in 12 spreading them out even. So is the running back pass game a big part of Moore's offense? I don't know if I'd say it's a big part, but it's certainly there to the point where they get into some, creative stuff where the motion can pull DBs across the field, and here's a really good one that maybe we want to take a peek at here. Let's share the screen. Let's just go over here to screen 2. So this is so what you're going to get is motion across, okay, the formation, and you see it pulling the DB across for one. You get a crashing player off of this play action, and this is a 21 personnel look. This is Pollard. This is Zeke. Okay, so you get a look like this where reset, and now defender's going to crash. Defender has to make a choice. You've put the defender in a bind essentially, and that's exactly what Moore was trying to do. And you get the easy flip over there to the running back in the flat. So they did more running back swing stuff than they did like, oh wow, running back's going to run serious routes. But there are instances where when they have two running backs on the field, which I don't think you're probably not going to see a lot of it. Just because I don't know if they're going to like having Barkley and Gainwell out there. Here's another fun little look here where this is Pollard, by the way. So they're in another two-back look, but they get Pollard on this motion, and what this is essentially kind of a fake inside or outside zone, and you're going to bring Pollard around on this reverse. So watch Pollard come in motion. They're set up for zone run, but they give it to him on the reverse. You have blockers out there to the perimeter, and you score. So there is a creativity to the run game that is possible. With the two backs, I don't think you're going to see a lot of throwing to the back. Again, he's not really good at the screen game, so I imagine you're not going to see a lot of that to Barkley because the screen game just hasn't been good. But swing routes out of play action where they're either trying to pull defenders to the flat to take guys out of the middle of the field, I think you could see a little bit of. But also, I don't think Jalen Hurts has been particularly proactive in getting to checkdowns, getting to the running back in the flat. So we'll see how those styles contrast as well. And I think it's kind of painting the picture of you're not going to see Barkley doing a whole lot in terms of running true routes. But you never know. You never know what Moore might have in the bag. Here's Joy says, do you think Welch could have deserved a roster spot more than Eric Wilson? Welch has more coverage upside, and he still can be a special teams impact guy just the same. Yeah, I think that probably the simplest answer is the one that's, not as analytical. It's just Green Bay seems to like Eric Wilson and some of the plays he makes flying downhill. And maybe they feel like they need more of that than they need more coverage guys. I think Walker and Cooper are really good coverage guys, and that has shown. It's just hard to say. I think it gets to the point where maybe Welch just had to show out like immensely more than the guys they kept, and it just didn't happen. So I don't know. It's a good question. I still think Walker as a coverage guy is really, really good. Same with Cooper. They cover a lot of ground. They can make plays on the ball, but maybe they just didn't want that many coverage-only linebackers. Hooey. Okay. So let's do this. Catch the rest tomorrow. Omer's at 5 a.m. Dang, man. Yeah, get some rest. Get some rest. Thank you, Omer, for being here. So, okay. Let's take a look at this really quick. Just because the receivers are such an important part of this. And again, when you have two studs like the Eagles do, there's, this is the kind of stuff you're going to see. So this is Brown's first 4 years in the league. His success rate against man is this column, so you see it consistently getting better. He has, I believe, top 5 against man in 20, 21, and 22. I believe he was, if I remember Matt Harmon saying this, and reception perception is a great place to look at receiver play as well. I believe he was, top 5 again. If he wasn't, he's either top 5 again or he was top 7 again. But again, another high number. Success rate against zone isn't that impressive. I think A.J. Brown's always been more of an impressive player against man coverage. And you see the success rates against press in the 80% success rate against press is insane. So that's the type of player you're getting with A.J. Brown, is this guy who can just destroy man coverage. And look at Devontae Smith, who had a 78% success rate against press as in his second season in 2022 this season. I don't remember what exactly the numbers were last season, but it was really, really good as well. But you see the success by route in 22, how good he is at running the full route tree. Like nothing's in the red. He's more average with the post routes and the flat routes. Really, the mark of a really, really good receiver is showing you can win slants, which a lot of people can, digs, comebacks, curls, and then also having a success rate that's pretty impressive down the field. When you win at all three levels like that, even the out routes are tough as well because it involves a lot of vertical pressure in your route stem. I mean, Devonta Smith is tremendous as a route runner, but we already kind of knew that coming out of college. So those are the two. Those are the two folks that they're going to have to deal with. Jair's going to have to be out at his best for this game. He really, really is. So there you go. Here's Joyce says, I would prefer Wilson over a guy like Tyler Davis in terms of Green Bay favored guys. But yeah, it seems like they just favored Wilson being the team. I thought Welsh was too impressive to let go. Personally, almost had 3 picks. And that play where he threw the tight end for the stuff of the line. Yeah, best of luck. I think he went back to Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken, or he went to Denver. One of the two. But yeah, I guess, I don't know. Maybe they just thought the room was crowded. They obviously drafted 2 guys. They weren't going to cut them. They really like McDuffie. Obviously, Walker's there. So they just really must have liked Eric Wilson. I wouldn't have been mad. I remember we were talking about this, like decisions to make. Christian Waltz was one of the decisions. Were they going to keep 6 defensive ends? They did. And that was kind of at the expense of tight end. Obviously, running back to IR helped and only keep. So there were decisions that were going to have to be made. Anthony Johnson Jr. was one of those decisions, unfortunately, for Zane Anderson. But it is what it is, unfortunately. Not everybody was going to be able to make it. Some guys that people really liked had to go, including Anthony Johnson Jr. So, Airstream also says, I think our safety group will be good enough to stop a mobile QB and Hurts now. Open field tackling has improved, I'm certain. Yeah, as long as the linebackers and safeties do a better job tackling in the open field, I think you're going to be able to limit stuff. Limiting yards after the catch is going to be a big deal with Smith and Brown. We kind of talked about it. Brown's kind of that size speed after the catch that can erase some angles, and then Smith is just kind of that savvy guy who has a great feel for where defenders are at. So, yeah, it's going to be crucial, but I do like the safety and linebacker rooms better. I'm still concerned about the linebacker room a little bit heading into this game. Okay, well, I think we've reached an hour, which is, I think, a good place to do this. We're going to 2 Pulse of the Fan Base things in one show, which I think is a lot of fun. So I would love to see everybody's picks for the game, right? So let's throw out some game picks for the Packers, as well as your record prediction for the Packers this season. I think that would be a really good way to kind of end it. Yeah, it would be based on how good we communicate with all the young guys. Yeah, communication on defense is going to be a big part of the game on Friday for sure, on both sides. Packers Kingdom says we just need everyone ball out like all pro. Honestly, we don't. We just need at most to play solid football, and I think we're going to be okay. Because, again, as I mentioned, Green Bay has a little bit of the experience edge simply because their offense is in the same system, and they're not making adjustments like every other unit is. So there is a little bit of an advantage there. So I feel the kicker real confident. Yeah, Braden Darvison is somebody I remember kind of typing in Clay's chat because I wasn't sure, that when they were talking about the kicking situation, I wasn't sure if they were going to keep Narvison because Tennessee already had their guy that they were probably going to roll out there. Turns out they cut Narvison. What a big one. What a big one. Okay. Packers Kingdom got us winning 9-12 games. Your pick this game is the kicker. Oh, for like MVP of the game. Gotcha. Okay. So game predictions, drop the score and drop Packers record predictions. I have mine in the ready to go once everybody else puts theirs in, and I think we're going to probably call it a night after that. I know it was a bit of a late start. A lot going on, including that fantasy draft. So hopefully, I appreciate everybody kind of sticking with me at the beginning and going through this because there was a lot to talk about. But okay, so Airjoy we got one. So we've got predictions 9-12 games and then 12-5 for Ayers Joy in terms of the record for the Packers this season. Ron Sanville says 34-17 Packers. Wow. What an opening start that would be. It has the Packers going 13-4. Nice. Very, very nice. That would be great if they did. Okay, so Arizona's got 12-5 and then says 28-17. I assume Packers in that one. Yes, Packers W. So there you go. And nobody has picked the Eagles. I will confirm I have not picked the Eagles. But here's what I got while everybody's putting theirs in. I went back and forth on this. I think it's very possible that it's a tougher schedule this year than it is last year, and winning 10 to 11 games with this schedule is much better than what they did last season at 9-8. So I flip-flopped. I've gone back and forth saying 11-6 or 10-7. I can't decide. Seems like a silly thing to go back and forth on, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think the Packers take this 23-20. I think it's going to be a close game. I still struggle to find a way to get to hit the over, but on the points this week. But we'll see. We've kind of laid out the blueprint for how it could be a low scoring game and how it could be a high scoring game, because the defenses are new and it could be a lot of communication issues. The offenses could just be ahead with all the talent they have and the familiarity. So it's going to be the score is a tough one to predict, but I think it's going to be a close game. I got the Packers 23-20. And I got the Packers at 10-7 or 11-6. I just think it's going to be a year of parity and a year of a lot of teams in that 10 to 12 win range. I really do. So 10-7 probably doesn't get Green Bay the division win. 11-6 probably will at least, put it into tiebreaker mode, I think. So there you go. Okay, Joseph Gleason says 27-24 Pack. Airjoy says everybody underrated us over the offseason. They don't know how much better we have continued to get. It's the young guys taking steps forward, a lot of guys taking steps forward could really propel this team to that 12-5, 13-4 stretch. I just found it hard with the Rams, the Dolphins, the Texans, the Niners, the Lions twice. I know you can yell at me for saying this, the Bears twice, that I think it's going to be a little more difficult to come out with wins each week this season. But I think they're going to be up to the task. I think we're going to see the Packers in January. We'll see about February, but I'm hoping so. Thank you, Ron, for showing up. Thanks, everybody, for showing up tonight. No, like as I mentioned, it was kind of a later stream, so kind of a little more difficult to get everybody in here, but something I really wanted to talk about before we got there, because, again, game tomorrow night, game Friday. There really isn't a time to do this necessarily unless I don't watch some of the Chiefs-Ravens game, which it's hard to not want to, because football is about to be back, and I'm excited. So Omer, United Bates, Chris N, Packers Kingdom, So Turtles, Ron Sanville, Joseph Gleason, I think at Packers Kingdom, yep, Prince Capsaicin, Ayers Joy, of course, Respect Oranges, a lot of the crew that are in a lot of live shows, which makes it that much cooler that all of you guys kind of show up to all of them. Appreciate y'all tuning in for this late night one. Hope you enjoy week one of football, because it's back and it's going to be awesome, and I'm thrilled for this thing to get underway. So Ayers Joy, last comment of the night, says, I think the Bears are going to be bad at first, but then get better late. I think the Bears have to get out to a good start, believe it or not. Looking at their schedule, I think it's more favorable at the beginning. They got a lot of division games on the back half that it's going to be a little more difficult for them. I think they're going to have to start out pretty hot to make the playoffs, but I kind of think they're going to. So appreciate you, Ayers Joy. Thank you guys all so much. We'll see you guys hopefully in the comments with all the videos. Going to be a long night tonight, but we're going to turn some stuff out for you guys tomorrow. A lot of Packers stuff. I know everybody who voted on that poll really quick on the wide receivers. The Puka video is coming. It was a lot to put together, a lot more than I thought because of how many snaps he played, and just making sure we got kind of everything possible into that. So a lot of cool stuff coming this week. Obviously, we're going to react to Packers Eagles in some way with some film rooms. We're probably going to be putting a lot of polls out. this year, just so you kind of get the feel of what you guys want to see in the film room. But we're going to be doing Packers every week, wide receiver every week, so make sure you're staying up to date there. Joseph Gleason drops in his record prediction, says 11-6. I think the O-line takes a while to shake out. Love is a lot more efficient, throws picks again in the first half of the year. Okay, so maybe a little bit of a late surge as well for the Packers. Maybe a little bit of a slower start, which I could definitely see. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Make sure you take a peek at the videos coming out the next few days, as well as I know not many people are there, and there isn't much on the Patreon yet, but if you want to take a look at that, you should be able to find that when you click on more on my channel page. The Patreon's going to start getting some prospects for next year and some other film rooms that, just going to keep exclusive to over there. It's free right now, so you don't have to sign up for anything. We'll worry about that later. But yeah, there we go. Super Bowl bound, says Joseph and Eris Joy. With all of that, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. And football's back. Can't wait. And